You're listening to the Shit You Can't Make Up podcast, a conversation with friends, hosted by Marisol Sanchez.
Hey, so you're sticking with us.
Oh my gosh, I'm sticking with you. I think it's more that.
This is part 3 of my guest friend, Beth, who's joining me, and part of the reason is I'm having a lot of fun, and I haven't had fun with a girlfriend in a while. You know, like fun, drink wine and talk about the Kardashian fun. Hello.
Okay. Well, you're like
she's just sitting here writing notes, ignoring me.
Well, you give me like 10 seconds notice that you're turning on the microphone and we're going to be talking about a topic, and I'm writing down some notes of how I want, which I think is funny because we've always talked about, do you have an outline for the podcast? How are we going to start this? I don't know.
What is it about?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm present now. I'm present.
You keep writing. I wanted to keep going and split it up, because I'm having a lot of fun, mainly, and because we're having a lot of interesting topics. And also the other thing that I don't know if I communicated to you was me recording this. I only have so much time. I don't do it when my children are around. It's basically Wednesday nights and every other weekend. And I don't do it if I'm not a character. I can't. If I'm in a bitchy mood, you don't want me to do it.
Right. Or you feel uncreative, or you just have.
I'm not. No one. Got my period.
Negative self-talk.
Yeah, I don't want it to be, so I haven't done one for a while, and I was stuck, and I was like, I need someone else on the other side of this mic to push me through. So we've been having fun.
Glad. It's so fun. Yeah.
I have one more shot of tequila, and then I thought I had one more topic that I wanted to discuss while I had you and your attention was, so I'm going to have to do where I'm at the end.
Right, yeah.
Okay. You've known me, okay, the reason I think that I don't know if it's a right, but what gave me, I think the way I described it to you, what gave me the balls to come on and do this, because this is not easy.
Right, no, it's not.
Now that you've experienced
it's not. And, when you're listening to it, you're like, oh, she should be more linear, which is something we always say. It's like, then you're in the moment and you're like, oh, it's not that easy to be linear. Life isn't really very linear. Just because there's a microphone in front of you doesn't make it easier to be linear.
But it was because I've had an interesting life.
Yes.
God has blessed me. This is I can honestly say this. Blessed me with so many experiences to have made me who I am.
Right.
Which is kind of an interesting fucking person.
Right. You have a lot of life experiences. Yes.
So, but it's been an involvement. So a little rewind for people if you haven't listened from the beginning. I'm going to tell you my quick little synopsis, woe is me story, but to end up where we started as friends. So what then to where I'm at today. So,
right, okay.
So we're going to talk about me. The evolution
#
of me.
Marisol's favorite topic.
Why I feel like we should have a podcast.
This is like any lunch we ever have. So let's just...
That's not fair. I always feel guilty. I'm really I'll text you. We didn't even talk about me. Or you. How are you doing?
I know, my life is so boring. It's very boring. It's not worth talking about.
But I always enjoy talking to you. Okay, so for those who don't know that, my mother's first generation immigrant from Honduras. I mean, not even Mexico. I'm Central America poor. Right. She was one of 12. And she was beautiful, and she she had an interesting life just on her own. Married 3 times. Back in the day when you didn't get married or divorced, she got out of Honduras, took a detour to Panama, had a couple kids.
Yes. She had quite the life herself.
Got to the U.S., married my dad, had 2 kids. I didn't even know I had a half brother, so I was 8. Grew up very you ever watched Jane the Virgin, the show?
Yeah.
It's a very light and funny way of growing up watching telenovelas and the obsession with virginity, and Spanish culture, and the subservient way we are with our men. I mean, we're very we're much more, I think, open sexually than my American counterpart.
Right.
I don't know about that story.
With that subservient virgin for men.
Exactly. God, all levels of fucking. Yeah. But so take Jane the Virgin and then take Mommy Dearest. Combine those 2.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
And it's so true. I mean, my brother and I would look at that movie. Literally, we'd look at each other and be like, they were rich.
Yeah.
But so my brother died tragically when he was 9. So people have had far worse lives than I. Coming back from India recently, seeing all that poverty, I never am going to describe myself as poor.
Right.
I've seen poverty.
Poverty.
Yeah, I was working poor like David fucking Trump. I'm really mad at him.
Linear.
But kind of renounced my Spanish. I was born here, spoke English. My name was Marisol. No one around me really his name at the time. Now I see it all over the place, Marisol. But older brothers, only girl. Psychotic mom for a few years.
Right.
And dad, I thought they were divorced. Apparently they weren't. I don't know. Oh, just crazy shit. So, which leads me to meeting you now.
Yeah.
So I left home 2 days after high school graduation, worked, and then lived my life, but I wasn't a lot. I wouldn't describe myself as a lot. Everything was about success. In my 20s. Did not have a lot of friends, which is kind of ironic, because now I feel like, I'm blessed with lots of friends. Yeah. Smoked. I remember being a smoker. Very career-oriented. Very...
Right. Driven.
Very successful.
You were really driven in high school and college, too, weren't you?
I go to online, Thomas, my son, and I have this conversation, I still want straight A,
Right.
Nothing's going to make a difference. My GPA doesn't make a difference for anything.
It's what you want.
But I'm just
competitiveness.
I want to figure out why I have this professor grades and but anyway, not bad. I had relationships, all horrible. Any relationship that I was remotely good for me, or the person was good for me, I ran away from. Which I can only think of one, really. All the others they weren't just bad. They were spectacularly bad. My first love, we talked about first loves.
Right.
Got my friend pregnant.
Right. And yes.
So how shit you fucking.
How many people have that as their first love?
I'm talking John Hughes.
Pretty in Pink.
He was. It was heartbreak. I remember crying in my brother's arms.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
I didn't. Yeah. So every major, so my parental figures were kind of a story. First loves were a story, and I did not like myself. I thought I was a bad person. I thought my inner dialogue was very, very, very negative. Self-worth was non-existent. But I got married.
Yes.
And
you got married.
Had
3 beautiful children.
And that was a turning point. And that's when we met. The turning point for me in my life was when I had children. I first had the twins.
Right.
And I literally got married and was pregnant. I was messing around with my birth control, shit you can't pick up, so I wouldn't have my period for my wedding. Have a history of double ovulating, like having period twice.
Yeah.
Twice a month. Have twins, boy-girl twins.
Yes.
9 months later. As my... Anyway. Whatever. So, when they were born, I suffered. Like, now I know this. I didn't know you... This is where my playgroup that I'm really close to.
Right. I didn't know you then. Or I might have known of you, but, like, we barely knew each other.
Severe postpartum. I didn't talk. Like, I literally did not talk. I was just, the second they were born, you know, people have that story, like, oh, the instant, all I had was fear. That was the only emotion, overriding emotion for many years, was just, I had to keep these two alive. And I think that, and this I'm making up, this is my self-therapy, or partly maybe with my therapist, I figured out, I, you know, froze because my complicated history with my mother, I had no point of reference, which circles back to my friends, you being one. I've always been attracted. The people I consider friends, the people I have connections with, are all, there's something about them and the way that they're mother that I admire. That I'm like, I'm not saying you're all perfect, and you know, that I do everything exactly the way people do it, but there's something about them that's like, that, I want that in my relationship. Like, you're
sort of drawn to the mother aspect of it, even though it might just be really hidden. Or like subconscious, really.
Yeah. I think it's more subconscious. Like, you know, I look at there's that common thread. There's something about them that I want to emulate or learn from. But that's when I got to know you. So what did I look like back then?
Well, you know, physically, like you look like you, like Marisol, but you weren't, you came on a girls trip. I think I knew of you, and I might have known you. I don't know, it's hard, it's really, though, you know, we're talking a long time ago, 15, 13 years ago, but I remember our good friend invited you or wanted you to come, and you said you could, you were ready to sort of get out, you know, the twins were old enough that you could go on a girls' beach trip, and you came, and there's a couple of things I remember from that trip. This sort of sums up, I think, like where you were at the time. And there's a few stories, and I won't tell all of them because some of them might be sort of embarrassing.
The blueberry cobbler story? Okay, that was that.
No, not the blueberry cobbler. That was like later. But you know, when we go on the girls' trip, everybody makes a meal. Mm-hmm. And you were signed up, and you were going to make some jambalaya, and
I read the instructions wrong.
And
I was happy. I'd had a few
cocktails, and we had gone out for more beer or ice or something like that, and you had totally screwed up the recipe. Like, you had tripled it or tripled some things and halved other things,
and Reagan had died, and it was Amy.
Oh, that was Reagan had died. I don't remember that.
Reagan had died, or it was his funeral. This I remember because Amy she's integral to the story because she's the friend that kind of, all my friends at that point, my playgroup friends, I lumped some of them into playgroup friends. Then my friend Amy, they were the first, them and the combination of having children were the first, like, oh shit, I need to deal with my shit. Like,
right.
Like, certain things, you guys were the building blocks of me getting self-worth, me getting, like, oh, I'm funny. Oh, I'm smart.
Right, like sort of giving you some validation that you needed to hear and stuff. Well, like, and so that jambalaya story, the jambalaya either took like 20 times longer to cook than it was supposed to. And I remember it being good. I don't really remember a lot about it, but I remember you were really upset about, like, the fact that you're, like, the first meal, your contribution to this girls' trip, that you didn't know the girls, and I think it was, and we all, like, could have cared less, really. I mean,
we're all drunk.
But I mean, like, really, we were like eating like rice out of the bag. I mean, seriously.
There was one person that was upset.
Who?
The person that was catching the ferry.
Oh, yeah. So, but the only thing I remember is, like, we had all gotten these baseball caps with our initial on it, and, like, so we just kept saying, M doesn't, you have M. I have a picture of you standing in front of your jambalaya.
Lots of pictures.
We'll post that on your page. That would be so funny. And you're standing in front of the jambalaya with your pink cap on with the M, and we're all going, Mary, M doesn't stand for math. And because you, like, could not, like, double or triple arrest anything. Anyway. But you were, like, really upset because of, like really upset. Like
you cry?
No, but just, like, really anxious about it. And I mean, that's what I was picking up. And I was just like, chill out. You know, nobody, it's all good. You know,
I've chilled out over the years.
You've chilled out. So, like, you were, like, really anxious about, like, how you were showing up in this group. And the other funny story, I don't know if this really tells where you were, but you'll be the judge of this, but, like, we were talking about something, and, like, we had little kids, and we were talking about, like, kids wearing smocked clothing, and like, when was it too late? Like, you know, some people were, you know, were just
explain to the people in you know, Sweden.
Okay, what smocked clothing is? All right, I will. So smocked clothing is the clothing that is, like, embroidered.
Very southern.
Is it a southern thing?
It is.
Okay, so, like,
and Hispanic babies.
Okay,
but
so
we do it. I don't think it's old.
It's sort of like an embroidery technique where you, like, just sort of sew pictures onto the top of, like, clothing, and little sailboats or bunny rabbits. It's cute, and a lot of toddlers wear them here, big bows, and so we were sort of chatting about that, and you're like, what? You're like, I don't even know. Am I smocking my child? Could I be smocking my child and I don't even know I'm smocking my child? And we're like, smocking is like an outfit. You're
okay.
I could tell lots of funny stories from those first couple of trips, but I won't because I mean, like,
whatever you feel.
No, I think some of them may be more embarrassing. Like sometimes you feel like a.
That's a funny one.
Is it? Okay.
Now I'm completely comfortable with that aspect of me, but that was...
Okay. This is my most favorite go-to Marisol story of all times. Is the first time we were playing games, and we're
drinking.
I think that's a given. It's a girls' beach trip. So we're drinking margaritas, and I guess it's like categories or something where you try to get somebody to say the word without saying these certain words. And so we're all in teams, and Marisol's on this one person's team. I can't even remember what the teams were, but so the word is, I'll let you guess what the word is. And her clue is, sometimes you feel like a
whore.
And Marisol says, whore! And, like, I can't tell you, like, the game, like, stopped. Like, everybody turns to her, and we're just like, what the hell is going on here?
I wasn't trying to be funny. I was like,
no, I know you weren't. I know. That's what was so scary. We're like, it's not Marisol. So anyway, that was our beginnings, is sort of where you showed up. But, like, you were very quiet and, like, anxious, I think, about...
I didn't care about the way I dressed, I don't think.
No, you didn't really care where... Yeah, I don't... That's not really my, like, forte in noticing people, but...
I feel like I've come into...
You definitely have... Yeah, I mean, a week ago, I have, like, 1,000 Marisol story, you know, like, or examples. But, like, back then...
I wore khakis. I tried to be preppy. Like,
you wore those really small polo shirts.
And you didn't have to add the really small part.
Well, then, like, no, I'm just saying, like, they'd be, like, really
form-fitting.
Because
in my head, I was one size, but the reality was I was something else.
We always go on those shopping trips, and you just buy the clothes, like, and never try them on, and you're like, that didn't fit.
Yeah, I hate shopping. Which I just, the only thing I love shopping is shoes. I'm, like, excited for boots. Right now.
Yeah, boot weather. So, but yeah, I know. I mean, you've definitely come into your own.
But
and also, one thing I will say, and you probably haven't even thought about this, but you've definitely come into your own musically, like your taste in music and the arts and stuff. I mean, because I don't know if you remember this.
The Coca Cabana song was a joke.
Okay, was it? All right, so then forget it. But
remember I was a joke. I was trying to be ironic, I think.
I don't think it came off that way, but
we do a CD for the trip, and everyone picks 2 songs, and I picked Billy Ellis, Copacabana. I thought it was funny. I always had good music. Yeah, I've always had good music taste. My brother.
Okay, I didn't know that, so I just felt like your music taste has evolved. Okay, yeah.
But I still like Copacabana. Who cannot? That's a great song.
Yeah.
It does make you kind of happy.
Yeah. Was it the Copacabana or was it the Pina Colada song?
That's even more awesome song. Come on. The Pina Colada is awesome. You just want to
I think we should move on from this guy.
What? Alright, so we were that was the first few. But okay, so that's what you saw. I was early married, didn't know how to really be married. I think that was actually the best I got along with my now ex-husband. He was really hands-on with with all the children.
Right, so you felt like you could go on a beach trip and not worry about your kids, which is a huge luxury.
Yeah.
For some moms. I mean, that's not always the case, I think. Yeah.
And so marriage-wise was fun. Was actually fine. Loved. Those were the best holidays because I went with his family. Like I had a place to go.
Right.
There were my children's holidays or the holidays I wanted for
the childhood you wanted for yourself. So, trying to recreate that.
Yeah. So those were fine, but I would say I wasn't a happy person. I was fun. I think have been funny. I got along with people. I don't know. But I don't think I was happy. I know I didn't look people in the eye. I didn't think much of myself. And then I was on huge amounts of prescription drugs.
That might have been why you were so just sort of out of it,
I was on, one antidepressant. Then that one wasn't enough, so another one, and then sleep aid because I couldn't sleep, and then anxiety. I was on a wheel. That takes us to the New York trip.
Yeah, that does. I mean,
but it was actually before. I would say it was the beginning of the change for me was when we started. The big transformation for me was when we started running.
Right.
Because that was the first thing that got healthy. If you think mind, body, spirit, my body was the first, and that's when I started getting more interested in nutrition.
Right, and just, that was a really fun time for me too. I think for all of us that did it, I mean, we trained for a half marathon.
We saw each other regularly.
We sort of had a plan, and so when you train, you run during the week. It's very scheduled out, and then on the weekend you run increasingly longer runs up until you can run the 13 miles on a half marathon day. And so we ran religiously on the weekend for the long run. So we're running 5, 6, 7,
and then we did
9, 10 miles. Yeah, and then we did a couple of triathlons, and that was even more fun because we would run, and then we would swim. So we would run around, we'd run 4 or 5 miles, and then we would swim down Banks Channel, and that was always really fun.
But see, the backstory, there's 2 stories from that. And the backstory to that was I was so unhealthy, compared to where I am today, health-wise. I was so unhealthy back then. 2 things happened. One was, I remember I tore my rotator cuff.
Right, yeah.
And the physical therapist is like I was telling him about my training schedule, and he's like, yeah, I don't think you're in as good a shape as you seem to think you are. He was
maybe your self-esteem was that's where your self-esteem was coming into play.
I thought I was still in high school swim team. And then we were spinning the channel, and then one time I just walked out.
I tell that story all the time. It's not really about the evolution of you, but we were swimming, and it was probably a pack of no, there's only 3 of us that day, I think.
3 or 4.
3 or 4, and we were swimming, and we sort of get in at one point, and we would swim down the Banks Channel, which is a waterway in our town, and right next to the ocean, and we'd swim it's a half a mile, actually, is exactly what it is. It's a half a mile, and but you can't really swim together like you run together. You swim, and you swim, and you swim, and then The evolution of swimming down Manx Channel is a pretty funny story in itself. But this one is, so I like at some point, probably at the halfway point, I like lift up, we're all wearing pink swim caps, so you can see each other and the boats can see you and stuff. And of course it's like 7 a.m. And so I look up and the other girl that's with us is in front of us, like in front of me, like 20 yards. And then I look around and I see you swimming and you're like 20 yards behind me. And so I'm like, all right, I'm right where, we're here we are, all three. Because you just sort of get to the end when you get there. And so we're all swimming. And so we get to the end, which is like literally, I don't know, 7 minutes later or something like that. And we get out, and we're sitting there, and we're waiting for you, we're waiting for you, we're waiting for you, we're waiting for you, and no Marisol. And we're like, what? And so we're walking out in the water, and we don't see you anywhere. So we get up, and we get in my car, and we go back. We get in my car, and we drive back to where we started. And so we feel like you've either pulled out, like you've gotten out of the water and walked up on the shore, and we don't see you anywhere. We get back to the starting point. We think you might have turned around. We don't see you anywhere. I'm still not nervous at all. Like I'm like, where is she? Because we're just like, this is not like unusual. Like this is sort of a story that you're always the star of. And so
the me getting lost story.
Yeah, the you getting lost story. So we get in the car, we go back to where we finished. You're not there. And so we actually end up getting in the car. We drive back past where we started, like the whole time going, Marisol, Marisol. We drive back like probably a quarter of a mile past where we started, like backtracking ourselves. And we get out, we're looking for you. I think we go back and forth a couple more times, and you're just gone. So we go way back to like where you couldn't have possibly drifted to. But we're like, go back there. We get out of the car. We're like walking through people's yards, and you were nowhere to be seen. So I get in the car, and I tell the girl that's with us, I'm like, okay. At this point, it's probably been like 20 minutes.
You're thinking about having to call.
I was panicked at this point. I was like, I told her, I'm like, if we get back to our end spot where she was supposed to end up, if we do not see her along this whole route again, and she is not at the end spot, I'm calling Pete and 911.
That's my ex-husband.
Yes. I'm sorry. Should I not have said anything? Okay. I'm calling Marisol's husband and 911. And our other swimmer was like, agreed. Like, we're like, totally.
Sorry. I feel so guilty.
But then the story ends here because we're driving back to the end spot, and there's this swimmer walking along the road, peering into people's cars. Like, she's peering into somebody's, like, random car. I'm like, is that Marisol? Like with her hands shielding her face, like looking into the car. I still don't really know what happened to you. And you're like, I thought this might be your car because it's white.
I don't know what. They were looking for the other person's car, and they switch cars a lot, with their job.
Yeah.
So I think that was, I don't know.
I don't know if that story is like that funny told like that, but like was very at the moment of like shit you can't make up.
Yeah.
But
it lost. But so we did triathlons.
Yes. I'm just linear now.
And then that's where we tripped into yoga. I tripped into yoga.
We tripped into yoga. That was fun. Yeah, good. Tripped into yoga. Got into that.
That took me in a whole different route.
Yes, you sort of took that and
ran with it.
Yeah, made that a big part of your life.
So that was interesting.
So that's where you started, and then about that same time, we went to New York.
Well, the runs is when it was probably, let me be very clear before I go into it. I now realize how many years, I'm so bad with details. How many years have I been divorced? 3? Separated? I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah.
And I know looking back now, because I have looked back very diligently, probably 4.
Yeah.
If you include the separation, at that divorce, and I or the marriage, not the divorce. The divorce and the marriage are two separate events. The marriage part, I would have probably ended up divorced, period, because of my history of origin, because of my lack of therapy, lack of education, lack of, a lot of just basic human, I was shut down. I was a shut down human being, physically, emotionally, everything. So when we started running it's really the first time I started, or it's probably started back with actually my playgroup friends. When I would tell them something about my life, which I don't want to go into too much, but the point I was trying to make is because of my history of origin, regardless of who I married, I'm not saying I'm the blame for my divorce in any way, shape, or form. What I'm saying is whoever I would have married, because I was such a fundamentally unhappy human being prior to the marriage.
Yeah.
I could still be married with someone who would have been willing to go let me figure this shit out with me. But that being said, that's when I started having the realization that maybe how can I say this in the kindest way? I should expect more from myself as a woman, as a human being, and in certain treatments, I guess.
Right.
And so, but I have to say, all of you were very kind. Like, no one was like overt about it. No one, no one's like, oh, it was more over many years of like, hey, you remember this cell phone? When I had the broken phone.
Yeah.
There was just, I don't want to go into too much detail, but there was things that I started to pick up on people's, like, the looks that other
you're like, this isn't what, like, it's, other people are saying this isn't right, this isn't normal, or like this how you're feeling, or how this is, it's not normal. And I think it's like hugely big of you to say that that regardless of who you were married to, that you would probably inevitably gotten a divorce. I mean, that's like truly,
it is
self-reflective, and what you should do when you.
I mean, that I'm not like trying to put the blame of my divorce on me at all. It's
right.
not, because I don't take that on.
Right. No.
But what I will say is, separate of whomever I would have married. I mean, it could have been different. I mean, I could have married a fucking therapist who could have helped me
your shit out.
Help me work with it. I could have married a yogi from the get-go. I did not. I married quite.
Yeah, you did not marry a therapist
or a yogi. So.
But that's somebody, like, you might want to, like, is there like a therapist dating website?
I'm so over dating websites. No, I just need a self-involved man, which, as we discussed in one of the many podcasts we just did, there aren't many. I'm sorry, that takes us to New York. But then we do this girls trip a couple times. That's like the high. We go on these shopping trips. There was a lot to go. It was fun. It was a fun time. It was
a very fun time.
Our kids were older. We have a lot of stories from there that we could.
Yes, many like a book of stories. But so we went to New York, and you and I just went together ourselves.
And that was an awesome trip. We saw a lot of awesome. We saw still my favorite, Book of Mormon.
Yes,
that was awesome.
Yeah. So
and two major things happened on that trip.
Yeah.
One was, I remember distinctly, we're sitting at a bar, and it's too early for dinner. We didn't want to be back in the hotel. We're just chatting, like doing what we're doing now. And I start taking out of my purse all my prescription pills that I was like lining up to take. And you didn't say anything. You did, but your face was like, huh. You're like 38 years old. You didn't say it, but you in some way communicated to me like, I'm not judging you. I love you. Everything's great. But hey, you might want to look at it.
That is so funny because I don't even remember that.
And
I don't remember you taking the pills out or
like. It might have just been a facial. Like,
and I'm sure I'm not very good. Like sometimes when I'm unguarded, my facial expressions are not like. I just like show it all on my face. Like what? I think it's the mom in me. Like there's like subtle facial expressions is what I try to rely on,
But I was like, so that was a moment for me where I was like, okay, I'm depressed. The pharmaceutical drugs are not doing it for me. I need to look at some alternative. That's when I really, I think, got into that. Yeah. So that was one moment. Then the other moment I really don't want to talk about because that was just an embarrassing. Remember the decline?
That was what I was going to sort of talk about, but like not, I mean, we don't have to talk about the details, but I just remember like that being like a really,
that was shame. That was shame in its purity.
Right.
Without going into too much detail, I'm on this girls trip.
Me and you are the girls.
You and I are on this trip in New York. I think I've been a diligent, wife, the mother to my children, well taken care of. It was a trip. Anyway, long story short, my credit card that I specifically got for this trip got declined at
a restaurant. And it had a lower limit than you had expected.
$500 limit.
Well, I was going to say that.
Okay. I did not know that at the time. Anyway, and there's whatever. Story, but it was an embarrassing moment, and I was angry.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I think I said, I need to go see a divorce. That was the first time divorce came out of my mouth. Then possibly, because up until, and even after I said that, even after visiting a divorce lawyer, there was still a good 6 months where I didn't want to get a divorce.
Right. Yeah.
You were really, really in the thick of it with me. That was like daily 1 hour processing. Imagine if you had a podcast back then.
Oh my gosh. How to process your divorce.
Is it that would have been like the angry podcast. That would have been me.
I don't like the thing about that New York trip is that we had a really great time. And you and I traveled together really well because we like to do the same things, which are eat, see Broadway shows, drink cocktails, and talk. And like pretty much, and walk around, and that's pretty much it. And so to me, like it was like a huge fun trip, and I don't remember pulling the prescription pills out, but I do remember the decline card, and only because the only reason I would ever remember that in my like mom addled brain 5 years later is because it was so upsetting to you.
Yeah.
Like, and then later I found out how upsetting it was to you, and like that it was really, and by later I mean like not much later, like the next week, like not like years later, but like how, because I was like, oh, it's a declined credit card. I've got a couple credit cards. I think have money on them. Like it's all good, And so for me it wasn't a big deal, but for you it was just a symptom of a much bigger thing. And then I just found out how upsetting it was to you, and then I sort of understood. There was some things. It was just like a slippery slope, and that was not a declined credit card. It was something bigger. It was much bigger.
And then you were a big witness to that point in my life. And at that point in my life, aside, how grateful I am for you and anyone who's going through a divorce, because I know a lot of people listen that because of the divorce thing. That's really important to have that person to, because it's, especially if it's a contentious divorce.
Yeah.
And children are involved. It is the bitch. It's brutal. It's brutal. It's painful. It's expensive. But anyway, that was a huge push in my involvement, because that's when it all kind of clicked for me as far as being a parent, when it was sort of like everything had to go on like the divorce was second to me trying, the best I could to make this extreme change in my children's life. Like they became first.
Right.
Not that they weren't first before, but it was first out of like a duty, like keeping them alive as toddlers.
Right.
Like, I really don't want to fuck up your life. Minimize how much this is going to fuck up your life. if it fucks up. So that was an intense time. But I also think it was the biggest. It has a lot of growth. It gave me a lot of opportunity for growth. A lot of opportunity to practice stuff that I needed to practice to, like, forgive my mom.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole process was a divorce and forgiveness. Like, I mean, it's still, a constant. So there's that. Everything. It sort of, like, just propelled me to, I didn't have to.
So you ended up sort of on that, not too long after that after that New York trip, you ended up sort of on the divorce boat.
Yeah.
And that
it
where
took
that
a few years.
Yeah, it took a couple of years. Like, it really wasn't that many years because I remember we couldn't go on the New York trip the next year because you were getting ready for trial, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, so.
It was a year separation. We went to trial.
So we went to New York in January. Well, as we all know, you guys separated in May. And then then you had the trial the following, like,
it was February 22nd. It was Lola's birthday.
The year after, like February, 1 year, 1 month after that trip was the trial, like your, sort of divorce trial, and so you like.
And then we got divorced October of that year, but we were in trial for a couple of days. But it was a very traumatic. I mean, if that trial could be written.
Well, you know what it was. There's a whole transcript of it, and I'm still having PTSD from that.
Many of my friends did. That was when I knew. I was like, that was when, like, there's this moment. It's like the moment at the New York with the prescription.
Yeah, there's like the signifying moments.
There were a couple in the trial where, like, people were gasping in the thing where I was like, oh, I guess that's really fucked up. Like, my level of, my baseline for, anyway, we're going down a slippery slope. My baseline is very low. My tolerance for, I don't know what you want to say, is very high sometimes for, accepting certain things.
Right. And so even though you were like, I couldn't understand some of your choices during the whole,
none of you could. Like, when you, like, I didn't know,
Well, I guess, let me rephrase that. I could understand your choices, but, like, they wouldn't have been choices that I would have made. Like, me personally would have made if I'd been in your decision, like, in your position. But I think what happened during the divorce, since we are talking about the evolution of Marisol, that, like, you sort of realized, you were, like, very, you really put the kids first, and you really, like, chose to, I mean, like, I'm sure you were angry a lot. I know you were angry a lot, but you really chose to not let that, like, just sort of rule your whole life. I mean, you forgave a lot of people, including your husband, ex-husband, a lot of times when I feel like,
my lawyers,
for me, it would be hard to do, So I think that was, like, where you were evolving into sort of, like, that whole divorce was, like, I think, part of, like, the evolution to, like, where you are
definitely
today. Like, the process, the hard, terrible process. It's sort of like,
world's good. Well, I mean, a couple combinations. I was going in therapy every week, so it was pretty intense therapy.
Yeah.
Got really into yoga. I was practicing daily. And yoga, I think, does help with stress, help with getting out of your head, prioritizing, the anxiety and stuff like that. So those two things coupled with the explosion of the divorce, I also think I helped, propel me to that. But but that was, like, I just remember the divorce because this house, my whole house was decorated. And again, I don't put this on my ex. This is me. It was me being like, you do whatever you, like, the house was totally, and
there was no you here.
There's no you here. And not only because of, it was all, my ex's style, because I willingly gave that. I was willingly. Like,
right.
If you're more invested in your style, I have no style, so you go and do what you want. I had no style. Like, I didn't know. I knew what I liked, but I didn't.
Yeah, I think you say that, but, like, I think it was, like, you say, I have no style, you do what you want. It's just because you knew your style. You just let him sort of, it was really important to him
That is the way I grew up. No, I counter that a little bit because it wasn't just looks. I mean, I knew what I liked, but it was also personal dress. Like, everything was functioning. To me, it was like, oh, we have furniture.
We have furniture.
That was, he's like antiques. I'm more of a modern person.
Yeah.
But I didn't know, like, I could identify it, that I liked it, but I just, I wouldn't say I knew. No, I think, because I feel like I've evolved a lot physically.
Yeah.
Red hair and tattoo. And smiled. I smile more. I look people in the eyes.
Yeah, you know what? Your photos, like, I mean, for a while there.
They still do. The ones that I take that look good, there's been 1,000 other ones.
Really? Okay.
Where I'm like, like, the one I posted yesterday, the red hair, there's like 10,000 before, and I didn't even like that one. I'm notorious, with the inside joke is I'm notorious, we should get that picture of me with Neil Brennan. I am notorious for not being photogenic at all. But I think in person, I mean, I'm like fishing hard here for help, but I think in person I'm much more attractive than I am in my pictures.
Oh, yeah. No, but I think you're beautiful. But you're beautiful in your photos, too. I think people would, I mean, like, yeah.
But I didn't know until you all said that. I didn't think that about them. I did not think that. I remember
that was beautiful.
Oh yeah, that was till bald head. I remember it was when I dramatically lost weight.
Yeah, you like totally transformed your like body and your clothes and your style. And
it was the one where we were at the house with the round table, the angry poker game or whatever.
Yeah, I remember that table. Yeah. Like yes,
so that was that year. You guys were outside, and I was in the process of a separation, divorce, somewhere in that phase, and I overheard you all. I think it was Allison. I hadn't seen her in a while. Like I hadn't seen. She's like, "Oh my God, she looks," and you all were like, "Yeah." She's like, you all were saying like really complimentary stuff. That's like think about my mother. Where do you think I would go? And I didn't make the best choices with people I dated before. Maybe. I don't know. Even the one boyfriend that I thought of as a decent human being, he was very critical of. He was big, like physical. I told you, working at So I don't know, but not anymore. Now I feel fine. Now I feel like when people show up, they're like, I'm like wah wah wah, and they're like.
Well, I don't know. I feel like you should feel good about it because, like, I think you go places to get a lot of good attention and.
I do.
Oh,
but I know it's ending. I know it's coming. That's the only thing that's a little sad, but I feel like before when you first met me, would walk in and no one would have even looked twice at me. Like I would just look like this like worn out mother. Like that's how I feel. That's how I feel. And now I walk in and I feel like if I want to, I can get attention.
I know, but like I feel like part of that. I mean, like, and you do look beautiful, and you have transformed, and there's no denying that. But like, part of it is like the Marisol that showed up with the like, I'm anxious about my jambalaya, and the Marisol that is today with the red hair.
Here's some crackers.
Yeah, it's like it's like you're, it's what you're putting out in the world too, don't you think?
Yeah. As I eat my.
You're gonna eat that? So I think, that's your.
I feel all talked out.
Do you feel all talked out? Well, we've been talking for a long time. That's sort of like my evolution of. I feel like that's sort of like how I see. I mean, like I have 1,000 stories about the evolution of Marisol. Some of them are funny,
and all of them
some bad directions.
He's horrible tasting men.
No, you don't.
Yeah. Well, okay. Sorry for the men listening who
who dated you, or married you, or wanted to marry you.
That's true. No, he's a grandfather. All the men I've married have. Had a relationship. You know what? They're not all bad. They're all just wonderfully flawed like I was. I was
Yeah.
attracted to
Yeah.
as flawed.
So that's the Marisol story.
Yes. All right, so you can catch up on these podcasts at, I really need to fix this.
Okay.
www.shityoucan'tmakeup if you don't have an iPhone. Best way is iTunes, subscribe, Diary of a Midlife Crisis, and you can also like us on Facebook. So thank you for listening. This was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. I'm glad I didn't do one of those, like, cut my wrist raw, like... Let me talk about my childhood / spirituality, or what else? What other deep fucking topic of discussion can I share with you all? I wanted something light and funny, and I got light and funny. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay, so you'll be back.
I'll be back. Yeah.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.